I thought we could talk tonight about avoiding the void. So the void is a term common in Zen traditions, for one thing. It's meant to take away any positive bias, any sense of I'm going to achieve something beneficial for me. So the void tends to take away that ambition, in a sense, that grasping onto something that will improve my life. So they try to dash that hope right from the get-go. So in the West, in Western traditions, often talked about the soul. You know, the soul is sort of a bit elusive, but it feels a little more solid than the void, right? At least there may be this kernel, this nugget somewhere available that at the time of death, at least there won't be nothing. There'll be this little nugget of my essence that will somehow go on. But it's even as it's described, it's a little unclear about how exactly that happens. Is it not available now, and that's somehow at the time of death, just as the ship is sinking, that we manage to jump onto this lifeboat? Not entirely clear. But the assumption is that, it's not readily findable now. But later, yes. So this concept of the void goes even one step further, is that just face the fact of this ultimate sense of formlessness now. Do it now while we're alive, and then that settles the issue. But the question is, when we use a term like void, it's like void meaning completely empty. It's sort of the dictionary definition of it, completely empty. And so it's the question of empty of what? So it's very similar to talking about like a cup of tea. The teacup is full, it's full of tea, and then you drink the tea, and now the teacup is empty, right? It's empty of tea, but it's not actually empty. It still has space inside of the teacup. In fact, it would be more accurate to say that within space, the immensity of space, the infinite nature of space, that a teacup temporarily occupies something within that space, is observable within that space. That would be the more accurate way of saying it. So if the teacup disappears, the space is unharmed. Or if you bring a teacup into that space, again, the space is unharmed. It's sort of like the body-mind, birth and death. The teacup enters, the teacup leaves, space is unchanged. So when we begin looking at what this essence, when we go looking inside, the essence of our existence, it should be apparent that whatever that essence is, that life force, must be present at all times. A lot of times in spirituality, the assumption is, well, it's not present now because of my karma and faults and everything, but at some later point, if I clean up my act, then I will discover it in the future sometime. But if we could even consider the possibility that if it is present now, then it doesn't require an extraordinary moment. It doesn't require a flashy set of experiences to document, to verify, to prove the existence of your essential nature. Your essential nature is already present. It's already present for spectacular events. It's present for difficult events. It's present for mundane events. It's present when we go to bed at night. It's what we are. That's what makes it difficult to see, because we're constantly looking for another object. Object could be an experience like the Enlightenment experience. But enlightenment is not that. It is what is present for what might be a cosmic, spectacular experience. And it's also present when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. So we don't have to wait. Waiting is a trick of the mind. Waiting based on a certain set of conditions, like, well, when I stop drinking coffee and eating desserts and begin exercising, then maybe I'll be qualified. But these are all just thoughts in the mind. Or when I start meditating, 4 hours a day, or when I, sort of put together a coherent set of beliefs. These are all ideas that the mind has of what is necessary to become what I already am. Right? Can you hear the convoluted thinking there? So to get back to what we were talking about, of this duality, this sense of experiences, sensations, thoughts, feelings, everything that appears within our awareness, and then that which is aware of that. So we have the world of form, and then this formless quality that has sometimes called the void, just to point out that empty quality. Empty of what? Empty of beliefs, empty of assumptions, empty of ideas, empty of judgments, empty of opinions, empty of the sense of self, empty, just present, right? Alive presence. So sometimes this, if you're talking about a live presence, sometimes people visualize, okay, that's sort of like, the divine energy sort of entering me as a puppet and sort of is the puppeteer and I'm the puppet. And no, it's not like that. It's like, it's more like watching the puppet show from a higher altitude, seeing the role of the puppet, seeing the role of the puppeteer, seeing the role of the audience on a stage, seeing the entire manifestation. Being the ultimate observer, being the ultimate subject of whatever experience that we're having. And having that experience of being the actor on the stage as well, and getting to not only observe the actor, but be the actor in this body-mind, as this body-mind, experiencing life with all its wins and losses and pleasures and difficult moments. So we get to play both roles, and we get to play them at the same time, and they're not opposed to each other. They're actually just two different ways of looking at the same phenomena. One, we're looking from and as this pure consciousness, which is always present. It is what we fundamentally are. And at the same time, having, through the presence of this body-mind, having the experience of being in the puppet show as the actor on the stage, let's say. So both, and the thinking mind wants to say, well, which is better? To be expanded, aloof, safe, at peace. Yes, nice. But then there's life, and the question is if we're free enough to be and recognize that what we are is this formless nature, which just by its definition, since it's not of the world of form, it's not subject to the law of impermanence. We can get our feelings hurt, we can get this body hurt, but the awareness that's present now is as intact as ever, unharmed, undiminished. Again, it's like the sky. The teacup comes, somebody breaks the teacup, still the immensity of spaciousness within which those events happen. There's to try to get a feeling of this sort of sense of void or emptiness. There, we could take a pair of dualistic ideas. All right, so let's just say we have the ideas of movement and stopping. Right? So if there's movement and then the movement stops, there's no more movement, but there's also no more stopping. They both collapse, right? So what this means is that when we're talking about duality, one is dependent on the other. They're not just opposed to each other, they're dependent on each other. They're actually part of the same phenomena. Okay, so same is true with up and down. If there's no up, down doesn't make any sense. There's no left, there's right doesn't make any sense. There's no evil. Good doesn't make any sense. There's no self. Other doesn't make any sense. So we can see that this tendency of the mind to want to focus on the differences, focus on the polarities of this dualistic world. When we focus on that, what we see is the dualism. And when we see the related nature of that they depend on each other, that they're just different aspects of the same phenomena, then we're not fighting for one instead of the other. The third patriarch of Zen left behind, this was in China, I don't know, 600 current era, more or less. And he left behind just a really, really, I don't know, probably 24 paragraphs. It's whole teaching. But it starts off and says, the great way is not difficult for those not attached to preferences. Right? So we all have preferences. Right? No point in denying that we don't like some things rather than other things. Of course we do. But the point he wasn't saying to be without preferences. In other words, deny your common sense. He didn't say that. He said for those without attachment to preferences, which is quite different. So of course we prefer this rather than that. But sometimes difficult things happen. So we're not saying that we have to like it or love it, or we're not saying that we have to condone it or that we have to, remain in that situation forever. It's just that we're willing to have that experience. We're not opposing it. We're not saying it's bad or wrong, or the other person is bad or wrong, or they shouldn't have said that. That it is as it is. It's the experience we're having. And are we going to argue with that, or are we going to acknowledge, yes, in this moment, life circumstances has brought this to my front door. Okay? And then we get to choose. If we're not arguing with it, then our energy is fully available to decide how best to proceed. Right? Maybe we stay, maybe we leave, maybe we say something, maybe we don't. But when we're not creating these, arguing for this half of the duality or that half, the mind is left with nothing to do. The mind is sort of demoted in a sense. Available when we need it, perfectly available, no problem. Well rested because we're not exhausting it all the time. And so we can just relax about that a bit. There's also, out of the original Zen tradition, and Zen sort of flourished in China, as Buddhist monks came to China, flourished, and then it was it migrated to Japan, where the Zen that we know in this country is more Japanese Zen. But the early Chinese Zen, which is called Chan, C-H-A-N, Chan Buddhism, was not only heavily influenced by Taoism, but probably as much Taoist as it was Buddhist. But they had some beautiful images where they were really comfortable with the notion of the ultimate being fully infused into this life. And one of the images that I like a lot is the image of the moon shining on a lake at night. And what they point out is the moon isn't intending to shine on the lake. It's just its nature to do so. Just like our awareness isn't intending to notice what appears within its field of awareness. It's just its nature to do so. Right? So it's not an effortful noticing, it's just its capacity to do that. And the other thing that they point out about the moon shining on the lake at night is that the moon doesn't get wet. Right? So it's like awareness can be present in a really difficult or really challenging, in the presence of great misfortune, and be able to remain present there, be compassionate, do what we can. And yet that awareness itself is not harmed by it, which is why we are free to be able to fully participate in any situation. Again, some we prefer, some we don't. It's just the way life is. But awareness is not objecting. We still have, our discernment. We may choose to remain with a situation. We may choose to leave a situation. We may choose to say something, we may choose to keep quiet, but the awareness itself will be present for whatever arises and will be unharmed. The moon won't get wet. I like that image. Okay, so back to this, just this sense of void, this, as we peel back the layers of our identification and see that they may be partially true, may be relatively true, but as we peel them back, we discover that they're not ultimately true and that something more fundamental exists. And what we discover is that, like peeling back an onion, there's layers and layers and layers. And when we peel back the last layer, there's nothing left. There's not an inner secret me. A better me, of course, but, something that we hoped we would find there. What we find instead is this spaciousness. And that spaciousness, we can react to that, right? We can say, oh my God, I thought I was, this discrete, independent, identity-centered here being. And then I find out when at the core of it, there's not a me there. I mean, there's memories and hopes and dreams and fears and regrets. There's all of that storyline. There's just nothing there that is personal when we get right down to it. There's this space, though. So we can either react to the space like, oh my God, there's nothing here, or we can say, what immense freedom. Beautiful, unlimited, vast, spacious, able to have whatever experience we may be having. So this is what I mean by avoiding the void, using the concept of an inner emptiness to scare ourselves. It's not necessary to do that because it is what is already happening. It's already what we are, so we can't, it's the discovery of what we are that's may be surprising, but if it's what we've been all along, it shouldn't scare us. It should clarify what we really are. It actually is immensely comforting to find out that what we truly are is beyond harm. Bankei, Japanese Zen master later on 17th century or so, called it the unborn. Unborn, never born into this existence, right? Unborn, therefore not subject to harm, not subject to death. Unborn into this physical form. It's the formless nature that has always been there and is present in everyone as is right now, fully. Right? And so our job is really to investigate any ideas to the contrary.